Okay, so the first thing I want to share about this morning, something got brought to my attention by a group called 1 Million Moms. I don't know if you all have heard of them. It's a conservative group, moms across the U.S. that are they're kind of like societal watchdogs, shall we say. They're trying to catch things going on in our society that we all, as conservative Christians, biblical Christians, that we ought to be aware of. Things that happen that often just kind of happen behind the scenes and maybe we don't even realize are happening in our nation. So I'm going to give you just kind of a quick synopsis here, but there's a publishing company called Zondervan, Zondervan, out there. And Zondervan holds the copyright for the New International Version of the Bible, the NIV, okay? NIV, New International Version, all right? And the NIV came out in 1984, and it was kind of an earth-shattering kind of a thing when it came out. I mean, churches across the U.S. embraced the New International Version, Protestant churches, conservative churches. I was 14 years old when the NIV Study Bible came out, and oh my lands, just amazing. The help that my NIV Study Bible was to me. I got mine when I was probably 17, and it was just one of those things that I was just, I was so blessed by my NIV Study Bible. Used it throughout college. Even when the Bible that I'm using today, that I've used the whole time I've been here at Sutphen Mills, one that Kathy bought me when we first got married. And even though I got this Bible that's a New American Standard Version, that NIV Study Bible was something I went back to again and again and again for its study helps. So here's the foundation of the problem I'm about to bring up. The NIV has this great historical reputation, and NIV Study Bible has this wonderful historical reputation that Zondervan, again, who owns the copyright, if any of you have an NIV Bible, if you open to that copyright page, it's going to have Zondervan there, okay? That Zondervan has capitalized on over the last 25 years. What Zondervan has done is they have let go of that sound biblical legacy and started doing some other things with the NIV translation that I'm just absolutely not okay with, okay? From 1984 to about 2001, the NIV was a good, solid, faithful translation. Everything, if it's got a copyright after 2001, we need to be cautious with it, at the very least. Now, I'm not saying throw out the baby with the bathwater. I'm not saying if you have an NIV that is newer than 2001, I'm not saying throw it away. But when you get to any passages that just don't seem quite right, you ought to at least compare them to either an older translation or a different translation that's a little more biblically sound, historically sound. This is not just happening though with the NIV. All right, this is not just a problem with the New International Version. For all of us, Bev, myself, Kat, Lydia, if she was here, we all use the New American Standard, although Kat doesn't use it quite so much anymore. New American Standard, the old New American Standard, wonderful translation. Oh, they did such a great job of it. But over the last 25 years or so, the New American Standard, in my opinion, has lost some of their faithfulness. So first thing, my first recommendation to everybody, if you're ever in a thrift store or in an old bookstore or something, and you find one of these old translations, if you find an old NIV Study Bible, okay, and it's really notorious because it's got a two-tone kind of a brown hardcover, most of them. They were the most common. Oh my lands, if you find one, buy it. They usually sell for $5, $10, $15, something like that. It is so worth it. Why are you shaking your head at me, dear?
They're $1 at DAV.
Yeah, so if you find an old NIV or if you find an old New American Standard, I'm saying before the year 2000, if you find an old RSV, Revised Standard Version. I was just reading this morning about Trump's inauguration. He's going to have his hand on 2 Bibles during his inauguration. He's going to use the Lincoln Bible, Abraham Lincoln's Bible from back in the 1800s, and then he's going to use his Bible that his mom gave him when he was, it was like a graduation or confirmation class or something like that. It's an old RSV, Revised Standard Version. RSV, Revised Standard Version. And the RSV is, in my opinion, the RSV is one of the most historically accurate, best translations out there. Okay? So there's my quick synopsis of Bible translation. Now, here's what's happening in particular right now. So Zondervan, this publishing company that owns the rights to the New International Version. By the way, Zondervan's a publishing company. What is their goal?
Money.
Really? You think? Yes, Zondervan is out there. They exist to make money. They have stockholders. They have a board of directors. They have all those things that these big companies have that are always looking at the bottom line. You know, how much did we make this year? What's our profit margin on all these different products and so on? So Zondervan has updated the NIV over the last 25 years multiple times, okay? And every time, in my opinion, it becomes a worse translation and it becomes more and more like what they want it to be instead of biblically accurate. Okay, but Zondervan has just come out with a new revision, a new study Bible, okay? And this is worth noting, okay? It's called the Upside Down Kingdom Study Bible, and the subtitle is Think Deeply, Love Widely. Think Deeply, Love Widely. Now, what does that make you all think when you hear a catchphrase like that? Think deeply, love widely.
Sounds good.
Gender.
Sounds good. Yeah, the big picture idea sounds good. What do you think, dear?
Love widely makes me think of gender policy.
Love widely. Whenever you hear this kind of a phrase, love widely, okay, we need to, in our society today, we need to be asking the question, what's its gender perspective? What's its perspective on homosexuality and homosexual marriage? Okay? Here's what Zondervan did. Okay? Whenever we have a study Bible come out or a new updated version, what we typically do is we go out and we find a group of scholars. Okay, so we start with the assumption that David on his own isn't the sharpest tack. And they're exactly right. So we put together a group of people that's going to work together on this project. Okay, and who you put in the group reflects what your agenda is. Okay, so for King Solomon Christian Camp, I've got a meeting here in a couple of weeks where we're gonna talk about our theme for 2025. We've got all of our deans in place already, but we've got a group of us that works together to put together our camps. They are ministers, youth ministers, associate ministers mostly. There's 1 or 2 volunteers that are in our group that aren't staff anywhere or anything. But they're all coming from independent Christian churches and churches of Christ from around central, north central, northeast Kansas. Okay? So that reflects what we're trying to do. And I could name off names for you that may not mean anything to you guys, but they mean a lot to me because these are people I respect. And so when I've got an idea and I wonder, is this a good idea, a bad idea, stupid idea, or whatever, then this group of guys and ladies, by the way, they can look at me and say, Dave, that's a dumb idea. Or when my dear friend Andrew, who is creative to the max, I mean, he is on the scale of 0 to creative and disorganized. Andrew's at the top of that scale. When Andrew comes up with a wild idea, the rest of us are there to say, Andrew, how are you going to do that? You know, how are you going to have this planned well? That group directs everything, and it sets the plan, the tone, everything. And so what we have as a product at the end reflects our group. When they brought me in to run King Solomon Christian Camp, one of the reasons they wanted me to come is they said, Dave, we need somebody who's going to just absolutely take a stand on biblical truth, and we need somebody who's going to be willing to stand up to a bunch of leaders, because that's what we got, a whole bunch of pastors and so on. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but pastors tend to be opinionated. They tend to be strong-willed. You know, otherwise they don't get anything done. So they said, Dave, we want somebody who's willing to look those pastors in the eye and say, no, you can't do that. You know, and okay, so I affect everybody around me. So camp starts to look like my goals, my values. The guy that Zondervan chose, and it's poignant, we got to realize that Zondervan's behind all this, okay? The guy that Zondervan chose to head up this group that's putting together this upside-down Kingdom Study Bible is a guy from an LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer advocacy group within the church. So when we see here this think deeply, love widely, we all ought to be looking at that going, oh crud, what do they mean by love widely? So what they say in their advertising for this Bible is that this Bible is going to speak to issues that matter to people in America today, specifically to issues like gay marriage, abortion, transgenderism. Now, if the person who is heading all of this up, which, by the way, these are issues we ought to be speaking to. And if I haven't spoken clearly enough about these issues in the past, and if you don't know where I stand on these things or where the Bible stands on these things, then, hey, maybe remind me, and I need to make some more specific lessons and speak more openly. But they're putting in this study Bible answers from their left-wing perspective about what the Bible has to say about issues like abortion, issues like transgenderism. This has been compared to, a couple of terms that I don't know. I hope you all know these terms, but as I was speaking with my own family the other day about some of this, I was surprised. We didn't know this term DEI. How many of you have heard of DEI before? Okay, what does DEI stand for? Anybody rattle that off for me?
Diversity, equity, inclusion.
Diversity, equity, inclusion. Stop going to conclusions there. All right, diversity, equity, inclusion. I like these ideas. I really do, on the most basic level. Diversity, what does that mean? Different. Okay, absolutely. So I was talking earlier about our King Solomon leadership team. Man, we need a diverse group of people on that leadership team. We work very hard to make sure we're including some ladies, especially children's ministers, especially youth ministers, especially, but we need some senior ministers on there too, but we're all coming at it from a biblical perspective. We've got to make sure we're doing that. But I was really pushed here a few years ago that, we've got to, as we're making plans at King Solomon Christian Camp, we got to be thinking along the lines of how are we going to do this with a first grader? Because what we often think about at camp anyway is our junior high and our senior high kids. But what about a first grader? Or camp, I think about going and playing basketball or something like that. But one of our guys several years ago was like, hey, Dave, there needs to be something for that kid that doesn't want to play basketball. What about the kid that's, they're not athletic at all? And so we started an art studio and really developed that program. There ought to be diversity. That idea of diversity, I love that idea in general. Equity. What does equity mean? Equal.
Good for all.
Good for all. We're going to treat everybody fairly. Oh man, I'm big about this. I don't want there to ever be anybody who's mistreated in any way. I want everybody to be valued. God loves you all. For God so loved most people? No. For God so loved the world, everyone, that he gave his one and only son. Man, inclusion. You want to throw me into a tailspin? Let me see somebody getting left out. Oh, I hate it when somebody gets left out. When I see a kid by themselves at camp, I just about go ballistic. And I try to talk calmly, and I lower my voice, like, hey, do you realize that little Sally's over there by herself? Why is she by, and I try to do that, but man, there should never be an outsider. In the Brundage family, oh my lands. If I ever see one of my kids, one of my family members getting left out of things, I will absolutely lose my mind. I love these ideas in theory. In practice, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the way it's being put forward in our nation today is not about freedom. It's about forcing it, okay? So I've talked to you guys lots of times about a guy named Nick Freitas, Freitas, Nick Freitas. He's a legislator in Virginia, former Green Beret, I believe it is. Phenomenal guy. He just, new video from him, just a little short video that came out like in the last 2 days, okay? He's talking about a bill that got introduced in the Virginia legislature, okay? Tell me, just think about this for a minute. So he's like, hey, this bill is being proposed, and the idea of this bill is we're gonna make sure that as people are coming out of prison, that we give them opportunities, we help them get a chance to get a new start in life, and we want them to be able to get out and to become productive members of society. They need to be able to find a place to live, a place to work. We don't want them to, you guys heard the term recidivism? Recidivism is the return to prison. Okay, someone gets out and they don't become a productive member of society. They go right back into prison. That's recidivism. We want to lower the rate of recidivism within the prison system and within all of this. And so I have this bill that's going to help that. We're going to make it easier for people to find a place to live. And in doing that, we're going to help them to be able to get settled in, find a community, become productive members of citizens or of communities. Okay, everybody like that idea? Okay, so Nick Freitas kept asking this question: what does the bill actually say? What does the bill actually say? And when he finally got a copy of the bill, it basically says this: a landlord may not discriminate against a former convict in renting their property. So, in order to protect that prisoner, you, as a landlord who's renting out a room, a house, an apartment, whatever, you cannot keep that ex-con out of your building, your home, whatever. Now, does that seem fair to you?
No.
Okay, so what Nick Freitas was saying is the solution that we're coming up with is to take away freedom from someone else in order to try to help this other person. Okay? That's DEI in practice. How are we going to help this oppressed group? Okay? Anybody, before I give you another illustration, anybody else seen or heard this anywhere
No.
that you guys have experience with or read about this? DEI, any of these kind of practices, the DEI practices where okay.
Oh, well, like, for gym memberships and stuff, they don't monitor who uses what locker rooms for different places.
Okay, so what Rose is specifically referring to is she was a member of a gym where she could go and work out up until she found out that the gym's policy was to allow people to use whatever locker room based on their gender identity.
Well, and it was even worse than that because they were actually allowing people in for free, and I was a paying member, and then they were allowing these people to use whatever locker rooms that they wanted.
Okay.
Free.
True.
Free.
100% true.
Okay, see, the idea behind DEI could be okay, but the practices of the way they do it infringe upon others. Okay, we've lost the foundational principle. Ben Franklin famously said that my right to extend my fist only goes as far as the next fellow's nose. You heard this idea before? If you haven't, then I'm not doing my job right. I apologize. We should all know these kinds of ideas. My freedom should not infringe upon your freedom. Okay? And your perceived rights should not infringe upon my freedom. Okay? So what that means, practically speaking, is, this whole idea of safe spaces. I shouldn't have to listen to ideas that I don't like. I should have this safe space where I can feel unthreatened. No. Your right to feel safe should not infringe upon my rights to be able to act reasonably. Yeah, we're running out of time. I get it. I understand. More practical, even more practical than this. Jobs. Okay, this is one of the places where DEI is really falling apart right now. In jobs. Okay, a firefighter. What should a firefighter be able to do?
Fight fire.
Put out a fire. What'd you say?
Fight fire.
Fight fires. What else?
Carry a person out of a burning building.
Carry a person out of a burning building.
Carry as many pounds of equipment as is expected to be able to fulfill that job.
Yeah, the oxygen tanks, the helmet.
Yep, a firefighter should be able to do the job of a firefighter, whatever that might entail. So what kind of people are we looking for firefighters? What kind of firefighter do you want if you're trapped in a burning building? Physically fit. Oh, wow, great idea. What else do we want?
Opposite of California fire.
We'll talk about that in a minute. You keep jumping to these great conclusions. What do we want?
They need to have sight.
They need to be able to see. What else should a firefighter be able to have?
Good hearing so they can hear where you are.
Good boots, yep, good equipment, all that. I want the biggest, baddest dude around. I weigh 220 pounds. There is no way that some little $140 girl is going to drag my sorry behind out of a burning building. I want a 260-pound guy that can bench press me. I'm sorry, I am selfish like that. If you're going to try to save me, you should be capable of that. And there's a difference between a firefighter and a lifeguard, by the way. Hopefully I float a little bit. So a lifeguard could just be someone that has great swimming skills, and they've got that little red bottle that they have you hold on to or whatever. A firefighter has to pick up a limp body and drag them to safety, State of California, this just came out as an article, all right? I read this yesterday. State of California, big white guy, goes in to apply to be a firefighter. This more than 7 years ago, many years ago, goes in to apply to be a firefighter. And what they told him was, great, we'll put you on a waiting list. In 7 years, we'll contact you. That's the average wait for a white guy. 7 years. before you can even apply for the job and go through all the testing. Okay? 7 years later, he finally gets notification from the fire department. Your time has come. You can come and you can apply to be a firefighter and go through the testing now. So the guy shows up at the appointed time and so on. He's standing in line waiting to do his testing. And there's a young African-American lady standing right next to him. He's like, man, I've been waiting 7 years to try out for this. When did you first put in to be a firefighter? Tuesday? Yep. In the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion, someone who is probably, I mean, hey, maybe this lady's got incredible skills. Maybe she's the smartest cat in the whole place. I don't know. But somebody who's probably going to be less capable of actually doing the job is getting preferential treatment over somebody who is probably going to do the job really well. And all of this kind of stuff happens in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, this whole mindset is often referred to as woke. All right, this is what woke is all about. Woke means that I don't do what's best. I do what fits this idea of this modern right kind of an idea. Okay, and we've got to be aware of this and be careful of this in the church. So far, the church has largely been exempt from woke pressure. Okay, largely been exempt from woke pressure. But within, especially some of our mainstream denominations here, in recent years, woke has become more and more a part of the mindset. Up until now, I've been able to say as a pastor, okay, if a couple came to me and said they wanted to be married, but they happened to be a couple of dudes, whether they identify as dudes or ladies, doesn't matter, but it doesn't fit my biblical understanding of what marriage is supposed to be. Up until now, I've been able to use a religious freedom exemption. Okay? What has been happening, and hopefully this will dial back, but what has been happening is there's been more and more pressure to force us, even within the church, to accept alternative lifestyles. So there's been some threatened lawsuits, for instance, against some of our conservative churches where somebody didn't get hired as a pastor because they were either gay or at least advocating for a pro-gay kind of a lifestyle. And the church didn't hire them when they found out about this. Or when they began advocating for this, the church fired them. So some churches have been getting sued. And so far, we've been able to stand against this. I don't know what's going to happen here in these years ahead. DEI and the whole woke mindset are becoming more and more a part of these things. And this is my great concern when we have this kind of an upside down kingdom study Bible that's coming out that's advocating for a woke DEI kind of a mindset within the church. We don't want to be putting these Bibles into the hands of people, especially not our kids. So when it comes to this whole, first of all, the New International Version in general, anything after 2001, I'm sorry, I would just encourage you. If you have one of those, I will exchange it for you. I will get you a different Bible, I promise you. I'm an advocate for the ESV, that's the English Standard Version. The old versions of the New American Standard are wonderful. The old RSV, the older versions of the New King James. The New King James has traditionally been very conservative. We're seeing it go in a little bit of a negative direction too. So for an understandable, easy to grasp, ESV is the best one that I have contact with that I recommend for young people especially. But here's what I'm going to say. I'm sorry. The Upside Down Kingdom Study Bible in general, this whole thing, nope. I'm going to absolutely reject and refuse that whole perspective. NIV, anything after 2001, I'm going to say let's look at getting rid of any of those, because it starts the slippery slope after 2001. And I can talk about particulars if anybody wants to have that particular discussion. Zondervan, any kind of religious works coming from the Zondervan Publishing House in the last 25 years, whether that's study Bibles, commentaries, anything coming from Zondervan, though, in the last 25 years, I am absolutely uncomfortable with. I don't have particulars that I know of from them, but just based upon their body of work in general, you can tell a tree by the fruit it bears. And I'm afraid that what I'm seeing coming out of Zondervan, I can't support that from a biblical perspective. All the DEI stuff, absolutely, I stand against that. Hopefully we're having a little bit of a reset in our national mindset. We've had multiple lawsuits that have stood up against woke and DEI in recent years. Actually, we had a lot of companies 2 years ago, huge number of companies embracing DEI in everything from hiring practices to promotions to, they're doing training sessions about DEI and stuff. And that is largely getting rejected completely. It's often being challenged in courts and getting thrown out. But even Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, all the come on in, guys. You're all good. You're all good. Everything having to do with Twitter, X, Facebook, all of that kind of stuff. They were very big in DEI a few years ago. And they're essentially being forced by the courts to throw all that out. And the court of public opinion has put so much pressure on them that they're throwing all of that kind of stuff out. So hopefully we're seeing a change in mindset in our nation. And with a new administration and a new Congress, hopefully we start to appropriately reject so many of these ideas that have been coming down the pike. So, all right, we are out of time. Thank you all. We're going to pray and close. Would you bow with me?